Thank you, Brady. As a scientist, I've gotten used to my friends and family nodding along as I talk about my research with mice. They know nothing about microarrays and they do not understand metabolomics, but lab mice. Everyone understands lab mice. They're white, for instance. And if you're a member of my generation, you're pretty sure they're plotting to take over the world. Well, I hate to break it to you, but these things you think you know a lot about lab mice are not entirely correct. As far as I can tell, we don't have to worry much about regime change enacted by tiny, furry revolutionaries. And while there are lots of white lab mice running around out there, lab mice also come in black and brown and tan and cream and gray and even polka dots. A polka dotted mouse. So the question then is, why all this variety? And the simple answer is that different mouse strains are useful for different types of experiments. Humans get many, many different diseases, and different mice are useful for studying those different diseases. So there are mouse strains that get cancer. There are mouse models for the neurodegenerative disease Huntington's disease. There are mice that have been engineered to get polio. Others are resistant to tuberculosis. Some are blind, some are deaf. And all these different models allow us to study these complex biological phenomena within a living being, which helps us advance our understanding of what might be going on in humans. And then there are the nude mice. And in addition to missing all of their fur, they're also missing most of their immune system, which means that not only are they really useful for studying immunology, but they're also one of the best models we have for transplanted tissues, since they have such low rates of rejection. And then there's the obese mice, complete with diabetes, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure. These mice have already taught us a lot about how different fats are processed inside the body, and going forward, they may help us understand these different comorbid conditions that are facing so many in the US. So obviously, not all lab mice are created equal. The right mouse strain can make or break your experiment, which means that these characteristics need to be stable and definitive. In the wild, mice mate at random, which means that the genes shuffle around all the time. In the lab, to get around this, we resort to inbreeding. By mating closely related mice, we can control the flow of genes within the population. And there are now some strains that have been inbred for over a century, so these mice are very stable. As you can imagine, this requires a lot of resources and a lot of manpower. All of these mice have to be fed and watered. You have to maintain a detailed pedigree to make sure that your colony doesn't strain from the genetic standard. And you have to screen to make sure that they have all the traits that you want. There are some labs that do all of this work themselves, but for many researchers like myself, mice are just one tool. You don't want to spend all of your time moving your mice around and making sure that they're fed every day. So for those purposes, we turn to the mouse industrial complex. And this is a set of companies that are dedicated to providing lab mice to researchers. They have huge catalogs you can flip through and look at all the different mice. If you don't see what you want, they do custom orders and they will make a mouse for you. And once you've picked out your mouse, you call them up, tell them how many you want, age, sex, strain, and they arrive in the mail a couple weeks later. It's not quite like your local CSA delivering your veggie box on your porch, but it's eerily similar. So of course, all of this comes at a price. Here in the US, providing lab mice for research is a $1 billion a year industry. And these companies work very hard to make sure you buy their lab mice and not their competitors' lab mice. The most commonly used mice are termed wild-type mice. They don't have any fancy mutations or genetic modifications. They've just been inbred for decades, which means that they're all very, very similar and your results are more likely to repeat. These mice run somewhere between $20 and $30 a mouse, so they're expensive, kind of. They have about the same going rate as silver, ounce per ounce. However, if you need a fancier mouse, one that has a rare mutation or has been genetically modified, like the obese mouse, these mice are often harder to breed, they have smaller litters, they have shorter lifespans, and so these mice can end up costing hundreds of dollars for each individual mouse. And even these mice cannot even begin to compare to the radioactive mouse. These mice are born and bred in carbon-14 only environments. Every carbon in their body is C14. All the CO2 in the air they breathe, carbon-14. Everything in the mouse chow, carbon-14. As you can imagine, these mice are incredibly expensive, coming out to about 10 times their weight in gold at the current market price, which is only slightly less than the yearly stipend for a graduate student. But regardless of their monetary value, each lab mouse we work with is treated with care and respect because it is, first and foremost, a living, breathing creature. Thank you.